Well, good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for coming today for the State of the State Budget Address by Governor Pritzker. This is the sixth budget address of its kind under his leadership. And we are the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, who has had, in response to governors, this one and all previous governors, a post-address from the governor's budget address. Today we are here to speak on some of the issues that I believe are critical for the black community. As this is the sixth State of the State budget address, that the governor is proud, and certainly we are proud of the work that Illinois has done to try to recover from COVID and many years of lack of investment under other administrations. The stability and progress that was mentioned by Governor Pritzker today has helped many communities, but we expect that to help and trickle down to the black community in particular. The story of Abraham Lincoln is a unique one, as we are intricately connected as African Americans to the story of Abraham Lincoln. And we cannot forget that Abraham Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation that provided the course of action that would ultimately free generations of black people in the state of Illinois. And we are the benefactors of the struggle of African Americans in this state and in this country, as well as the benefactors of the emancipation. However, emancipation does not mean equity, and it certainly doesn't mean justice for black communities across the state. We are looking for additional support in those communities that have been and are based on social indicators at the bottom of every economic ladder in the state of Illinois, whether housing or health care, job access or loans for small businesses. We are struggling in our communities from the top of this state to the bottom. And we, as the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, represent those black communities and have a responsibility to speak to the issues that don't quite translate to their improvements. And so today, I join my colleagues here to do exactly that. First, I'd like to bring to the podium my colleague and partner in the Senate, Senator Robert Peters, that will give a few comments to this point. Senator Peters.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm State Senator Robert Peters of the 13th District. I'm also chair of the Senate Black Caucus. Let me first just say that first glance at this budget, I see a good start. I see something that we can build off of. I see the fact that taking out medical debt, which disproportionately impacts black working class families, that is something that is huge for communities. That's something that's worth applauding. And to take that from Cook County to the rest of the state is in itself historic. I see investments, transformative investments in housing, but it's clear that we have to make sure that we continue to push. As you know, the conversation about the unhoused has risen up over the last 6 months. Well, we need to make sure that that's more than a conversation, that's a budget line item. We also are going to see investments in the Reimagined Public Safety Act and broader Public Safety Act and violence intervention successes. Fundamentally, what you're going to hear from my colleagues behind me is that when we talk about what it means to give to the black community, that's what it means to give to the rest of Illinois. And that for too long, to be black in America and to be black in Illinois is to be left behind. And though over the last 5 to 6 years we have done much to move beyond a deep and painful budget hole, we've done much to be transformative when it comes to ARPA dollars. We are now entering a new era where we don't have the luxury of ARPA, but we need to make sure that we are giving people the luxury of dignity. And may that dignity come out of things like GRF and federal programs. That whether it's education or it's housing or this very loud mic, because it's very loud, and it's violence intervention or healthcare, I repeat, if you give to a black working class family, you're given to everybody. That is why equity matters. Enough is enough when it comes to being forgotten. But I know we have a great start and a great foundation. We have a good governor, we have a great majority, and we have a great many leaders. And we're thinking forward, and we'll continue to push. So I'm going to turn it over to the House Chair, Justin Slaughter. But thank you, everybody, for coming out, and thank you to my colleagues.
Thank you, Senator Peters. Good afternoon, everyone. Over and over again, we've seen the black folks fight to get our fair share in this country, only to hear excuse after excuse. As the House Chair of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, I'm here today to tell you that we cannot wait, and it is never soon enough for the change we need to come. Let's be clear. The black community is disproportionately impacted by every social determinant of health. We're talking about the wealth and poverty gap, our education gap, our health gap as it relates to chronic illnesses, our criminal justice system, where we are 14% of the state's population, but routinely over 50% of the prison population. Housing, we just heard it today, 14% of the population, but 61% of the unhoused. Environmental justice, we can go on and on. These glaring disparities did not start in 2019 with the pandemic. They started in 1619, when our ancestors were brought to this country against our will. Because of these disenfranchisements, our community is constantly, consistently lagging behind in measured data such as household income, educational attainment, net worth, health outcomes, life expectancy, and even food access. My colleagues in the House and Senate have and will continue to put forth legislative reforms that take decisive action in addressing these long-standing disparities. Even with some historical steps forward, we know more is needed to be done. The effects of systemic racism have created the lopsided, unfair circumstances that we see in our black families all too often. It now must take systemic action to course correct and finally get this state and country to live up to its ideal that all men and women are created equal. We are asking everyone, all stakeholders, to do more, to collaborate, to right these historic wrongs. Thank you so very much, and now we will hear from some of the dynamic, great leaders of this great caucus. Who we have up next, Madam Chair?
Thank you, Chairman. Next, we will hear from leaders of the caucus in specific issue areas, starting with Senator Chris Belt and Representative Sonia Harper on our economic and community reinvestment. Remember, under Leader Lightford, we passed our 4 pillars. This is not just a one-time issue. It requires us to continue to work and build upon the policy issues, but we also have to fund them. Not just put them in the budget, but get it out of the executive office as well. That's what they will speak to. Next, we have Senator Belt and Representative Harper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. One thing that we've heard from each speaker is really a common theme of access, opportunity, right? And one of the things that we're so proud of as the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, the body, is the work that we've done to move us forward. And make no mistake about it, when we move forward through legislation, it's good for everyone. And one of the things I want to highlight, right, is some of the work that we did back in those historical pillars, the economic pillar, number 3. And I want to highlight some things that was pushed through fought hard for and signed into legislation would be the work that we all did on the Predatory Loan Prevention Act. Newsflash, it is working. Now listen real closely, because I'm not gonna be up here long, but the Predatory Loan Prevention Act, it went into effect March of 2021. And essentially what we did was we looked at the Military Loan Act, and we capped rates, consumer loan rates, at 36% interest. We got away from the triple digits and put it at 36% interest. Now, since we've done that, a report came out, and this is the basis of my speech. In January of this year, Woodstock put out a report, and it says, is it working, the PLPA? Now, I want to highlight a couple things, and I'll turn it over to my colleague. In 2019, consumers paid $607.4 million in interest and fees on payday loans, installment payday loans, auto title loans, and small consumer loans. Again, in 2019, $607.4 million. In 2022, after the PLPA went into effect, consumers paid $1,279 on those same loans, right? And that's a saving of more than $600 million. That's the power of legislation, that's the power of the Black Caucus. And even though that disproportionately impacts black folk, brown folks, lower wage people, it raises all of us. That's $607 million that people have in their pockets that they did not pay on interest. Real quickly, prohibiting predatory payday loans has eliminated racial, ethnic, and economic disparities with respect to payday lending in Illinois. That's what we wanted, right? Thirdly, comparing a period before the PLA to periods after the PLA, bankruptcy filings decreased in Illinois more than in any other state, right? That's not coincidence, that's policy, right? That's the way it's supposed to be. Lastly, so you got to understand, when we were pushing this legislation, we heard that, well, if you do it, we're going to close our business, we're going to leave, and we're not coming back. And they did that. They were true to their words. They closed business, they closed shop, but guess what? The sun came out the next day, the wind blew, and we moved forward. So, absolutely. Now, fast forward, over $2.1 billion in loans were reported statewide in 2023. Over $2.1 billion. We've never had that amount, and that's with the PLA. In 2019, we only had $1 billion. That's before the PLA. In other words, the PLA is working, right? More people are taking out loans because the loans are capped at 30% interest. Real legislation, tangible results, that's what we're pushing. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Belt. Greetings, everyone. My name is State Representative Sonia Harper from the 6th District. You know, today's address underscores the ongoing and accelerating progress that's been spurred as a result of focusing on fundamentals. Equal access to economic opportunity and repairing those done wrong by policy and practice is essential if any society is to call itself equitable. And that's why some of what Governor Pritzker had to tell us today was so exciting. Now, to be clear, this was just a proposal, and now our work begins to build a budget that is both smart and equitable. And I look forward to going line by line through his proposal, reviewing our current budget figures, and ensuring the priorities of our community are also heard. In doing so, I'll be focusing on expanding and building upon the benefits that we have secured in the current budget, as well as ensuring uplifting historically disadvantaged communities who have been waiting for their relief from systemic racism and its trickle-down effects that we are forced to live in today. So I'm pleased that we've made Illinois communities safer with hundreds of millions of dollars in funding for community-based violence prevention and community providers that provide after-school programs, youth summer jobs, and enriching opportunities. I'm pleased that we have restored career and technical education to prepare young people for high-wage jobs by investing $22 million for the Workforce Equity Initiatives. We funded innovative resources for the unhoused with $360 million for affordable housing and homelessness prevention. We've invested $46 million in youth employment, offering young people alternatives to negative influences and the opportunity to build a future. We funded chambers of commerces in Black communities, including mine. We've created a new pilot program to help Black and brown startup companies get the seed money they need to get off the ground. And we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into infrastructure projects across Illinois, building up historically disadvantaged communities. And as the person who helped put food deserts on the map by law in Illinois so that we could finally start addressing them, I am happy to see that the continuation of the Illinois Grocery Initiative, because we are still waiting to feel the effects of that funding in my district, where we die prematurely from preventable diet-related diseases more than any other cause. I am pleased to see some of these same budget items we have been fighting and begging for decades, the same items we passed in the economic pillar, the same things I fight for in my community and district every day, are included in this governor's budget proposal. And all this and more will be priorities as we embark upon this year's budgeting process. And again, I look forward to making sure all vulnerable communities get the repair and the equity they are owed and have been waiting on for so very long. And again, every year I caution this caucus and my colleagues in the General Assembly, it's wonderful getting our initiatives into the budget. It looks really good on paper. But for Black communities, it will be even better if we can get our funding out of the budget and it actually reaches the ground where it is needed in our most vulnerable communities. And for those who say that Black people get too much in the budget, please take a look at what Black communities actually receive from the budget, and then come and take a stroll on my block and compare it to yours. Thank you, and have a great day.
Ms. Sonia Harper and Senator Belt, look, the Black Caucus is not playing. We don't want it just in black and white on some paper. We want it out into communities so they can see and feel it. Next, I have the privilege, she got me all worked up, y'all, of bringing to the microphone two of our great leaders, Representative Cam Buckner and Senator Willie Preston, who will talk about the importance of public safety in our communities.
Good morning. I'm Cam Buckner. I represent the 26th District in the Illinois House. And we know that the only way that we gain actual power and more resources for our community is with a collective voice. And that's why we stand here today, using this moment in time to change the trajectory of all of our communities. In regards to public safety, there has been a gun violence epidemic in Black communities all over the country for decades. But unlike in the past, we also have lived through a global pandemic. And the response that we saw from the state and the federal government should be the blueprint to how we deal with the need to create true safety and true justice in our communities. A call for more resources to serve communities is needed to respond to this crisis. And this is that call. We must flood our community with resources. The more resources we invest, the quicker disparities will decline. As disparities decline and people get good jobs, affordable housing, healthcare, and education, violence will decline. Violence prevention is important. Limiting illegal guns is important. And creating a safer community is pivotal, and it is possible. The elected representatives of the people standing here with me today have put forth budget priorities and policy proposals that would move us further along in those efforts, such as the creation of a Department of Returning Residents focused on reintegration, recidivism, and second chances, the Safer Communities Act, reestablishing parole in Illinois, and an increase in the Prisoner Review Board funding and headcount capacity, the Correction Data Request and Transparency Act, and increased funding to the Illinois Access to Justice Program and the Family Prevention Program in disproportionately impacted areas, just to name a few. People have seen the government offer support at a historic level, and yet so many underserved Black communities are still lagging. The unemployment rate in Black communities nationally peaked at 9.8% in February of last year. In Illinois, unemployment rates last year in Black communities was 10.5%, in comparison to 3.3% in white communities. This does not account for the working poor or the underemployed. And with those numbers, there is no surprise that violence is spreading. And now there are calls for harsher prison sentences. But we should be calling for more support and more resources for families so that the cycle of violence does not continue to repeat itself. Our budget priorities in this space remain aligned with the funding and implementation of our pillars because the work to reform our criminal legal system remains undone. I say criminal legal system because we don't truly have a criminal justice system, but the people standing behind me are building one for the state. True public safety goes beyond criminal legal reform. True public safety in our communities is attached to the things that my colleagues have already or will soon talk about: education, housing, economics, healthcare. Said differently, when people are educated, housed, gainfully employed, and healthy, we are all safer. We look forward to continuing the conversations on how, through this budget, we can create that reality. Senator Preston.
Thank you. I'm State Senator Willie Preston from the 16th Legislative District. Just this morning, I woke up to dozens of missed calls from my wife, Brittany, and our children, because in the wee hours of the night, there was a shootout right outside of my house. My neighbor's windows have bullet holes in them this morning. A bullet pierced my window pane. But thankfully, my family was not physically harmed. But unfortunately, that's not the first close to home experience with gun violence I've had, and I doubt it'll be my last. During the pandemic, a 14-year-old I mentored was tragically murdered just doors away from my home. There was a time where I lived a lifestyle that was leading me to that exact same fate. This is the harsh reality of gun violence in our communities. But something can be done. I believe that there's a path to reducing gun violence and giving purpose back to our youth who have been subjected to the ills of disinvestment and systematic neglect, leading to instability, hopelessness, and anything but public safety for far too many Illinoisans. I believe that investing in the trades can give them that purpose. Becoming a carpenter changed my life, and it changed my trajectory. It gave me purpose, skills, and a sense of pride in my work. When we walk these halls as Black legislators, we don't have the luxury to just be legislators. We have to be fighters for those who were like me, trying to find a way to escape the violence that's suffering in our communities every day. That's why I'm here to advocate for Illinois to put our largest investment in trade schools modern history, specifically targeting young Black people in Chicago by providing accessible and high-quality vocational education. We can give our youth the tools they need to build a better future and steer clear of gun violence that wrecked my home last night. Perhaps some of them may be here one day as senators. Investing in the trades is not just about teaching a skill, though. It's about offering hope, opportunity, and a pathway to a safer community for all of us in this state. Let's come together, invest in our future, to invest in public safety, and invest in the potential of our young people. This issue, like all of those we take in Springfield, requires us to come together as a collective, and I'm calling on my colleagues in the House and the Senate, the governor's office and the governor, leaders and members of the trades to join me in developing a comprehensive legislative plan to reintegrate the trades into our schools, our colleges, and most neglected communities like Inglewood and Auburn Gresham, where I grew up, where I live, and now representing the Illinois State Senate. Thank you all.
Thank you, Senator Preston and Representative Buckner. Next, we've heard from our former chairwoman of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, Representative Harper. Now it's my pleasure to bring forward our immediate past chair, Senate member Kimberly Lightford, as well as our leader in education in the House, Representative Will Davis.
Thank you, Chairman Ammons. Greetings, everyone. We finally have a governor that's not ashamed to say black people. We finally have a governor that I heard say he was putting additional dollars into homelessness for black people. And I was happy to hear that because as we address asylum seekers, I want to talk about black folks who have been asylum seekers in their own homes and in their own communities. So I want to thank the governor for acknowledging black people and the work we need in infant mortality and health care, all the disparities and inequities from across the spectrum, from education to health care to Safety Act to economic access. There's a reason why black folks are born into poverty. The systemic racism that is embedded in state government and all the governments that run this country has been clearly designed to keep us from performing. And we know that we stand at a critical juncture where the decisions that we make today as Black Caucus members will shape the trajectory of our tomorrow. Among the most vital investments we can make is in the education of our children and in our young adults. K-12 education serves as the bedrock upon which our society is built. It is within the walls of our elementary and secondary schools that young minds are molded, where the seeds of curiosity and creativity are sowed. We cannot turn a blind eye to the reality that unequal access to a quality education perpetrates cycles of poverty and marginalization. It is our duty as Black Caucus members to ensure that every child, regardless of their zip code or their socioeconomic status, has access to a world-class education. So I appreciate the governor for answering the call to commit to bringing forth a new state agency to administer early childhood programs. We know that 3- and 4-year-olds in the black community often show up unprepared for kindergarten. Representative Canty and I last year passed legislation to increase kindergarten to a full day. We want our children there, we want them ready, and we want them to be able to learn at the same pace, if not excelling all other students. So we appreciate the effort. Rep. Canty and I are carrying legislation to create the Department on Early Childhood Education. But we can't stop there because we're not in these state universities as we should be. The University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, our flagship university, does not have enough black students in it. does not have enough black teachers in it, does not have enough black professors in it, does not have enough maintenance workers in it, does not have enough black folks in the cafeteria. That is the responsibility for the Black Caucus to continue to work on. I know I'm supposed to talk about the proposal that the governor just mentioned in the budget, but unless we address all of these challenges, our communities cannot be whole collectively. So when I think about higher education, Representative Ammons and I worked on the pillar system for educational workforce development. We created a commission, the Illinois Board of Higher Education Commission, to create a funding formula for colleges and universities in the state of Illinois so that our kids would have equal access to a higher education. We're not performing at the level we should be, good people. We are not. Our kids are not in our state universities. It's up to us to get them there. So I want to thank the work that Carol and I have done. You're going to be hearing lots about that this session as we continue to move on. But our commitment to education is definitely not a luxury. It's a pathway to opportunity, and it's upward mobility. Our colleges and universities serve as engineers and innovation hubs. Further, it directs the board to regularly evaluate the impact of the implementations and create a strategic plan that includes black folks in it. A strategic plan that's gonna move our communities. So today, as we stand firm on our commitment to become the architects of a brighter tomorrow, where every child has the opportunity to learn, grow, and succeed, together, let's ensure that the promise of education remains within reach for all Illinoisans, and you better believe the Black Caucus is leading the way in this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader Lightfoot, for setting the stage in the education space for us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Will Davis. I'm state representative of the 30th District in the South Suburbs. The one thing that I think you have to walk away from after this press conference is that we are serious about black people in the state of Illinois. We are. Sometimes it's tough, sometimes it's easy. It's only more difficult when we think about the administration, maybe not the governor, and we appreciate him acknowledging black people in his speech today, but sometimes the work is done in the agencies, where we don't see the representation of black people leading the agencies that understand where we're coming from and what we want to accomplish. Because if you understand this process, you know it's not so much the speech, it's not so much the budget, it's the implementation that becomes the challenge for us. In the education space, I chair K-12 education in the House. Education is a continuum, ladies and gentlemen. We've heard the senator talk about early childhood. I'm in the K-12 space, and you'll hear more about higher education. So if we're responding to the governor's speech, yes, he talked about $350 million new dollars in the K-12 formula that I worked on several years ago with my colleague standing right here, Senator Lightfoot, to make a pathway to make sure that schools in the state of Illinois receive all the additional state funding that they need to be successful. It's a continuum, ladies and gentlemen. Now the governor's adding early childhood. And we want that because, as the senator said, we have to acknowledge that our 0 to 5 is important. We have to give them the foundation to be successful. But if we're not continuing to add the resources at a higher level in K through 12, what can they look forward to when they get to K through 12? So it is so very important that while he acknowledged $350 million new dollars, that's great. But we are already behind in what's necessary to make sure that our schools in the state of Illinois are fully funded. That number should have been at least $550 million. So to the extent in which I have the capabilities to work with my colleagues here in terms of crafting a budget, we hope that we are able to increase that amount from $350 to at least $550 million in K through 12 funding. Whenever we make those increases, ladies and gentlemen, we set the floor. So that floor has continued to go up, but it needs to go up 2 or 3 floors more this time to make sure we are on par and on pace to make sure that K through 12 schools get to 90% adequacy relative to their funding. Many of them have gotten to 60 with our current effort, but we know it's going to take so much more to get us to 90% adequacy in funding so that we can look forward to our young people being the next us, standing around this room. That is what we are striving for. Senator Preston touched on something that I think is so very important. We want our young people to go to college. We do, if that is their desire. But we also are acknowledging that for some young people, working with their hands will be the best thing for them. It will offer them a great life and a great way to support themselves and their families. But the challenge there is that many of our unions are led by people, white people, who don't care about these black young men and women. They just simply don't. Simply don't. So we need them to move out of the way so that we can move forward, so that our children in the state of Illinois, our black children in the state of Illinois, have access and opportunity to be whomever and whatever they desire to be. And we think about them raising the next generation of leaders. We want that generation to see what they can become when they look at their mothers and their fathers. So yes, there's work to do, and we're proud of the progress we've made, but we have to acknowledge there's so much more progress that needs to be done in the state of Illinois to make sure we have their adequate resources, opportunities, particularly in the building trades. When you look at those road projects, who do you see? Not the folks standing behind me. And that's a reality. That's not hyperbole. That's reality that we don't see people that look like us on these road projects. These are union jobs, and everybody talks about how great union jobs are. But if we don't have them, how great can they be? If we're not in them, then they can't be all that great. Open up the doors and allow us entry into these spaces so that we can make sure that black children have every opportunity to be successful. We want, as Reverend Jackson would say, we want them to go to Penn State and not the state pen. If I can bring Reverend Jackson into this a little bit. We thank you for coming and being a part of this response, but this isn't the beginning of the response. This is midway into the response, because the Black Caucus has already been working to make sure that our programs are being implemented and dollars are being spent in our communities the right way. But we have a long way to go. And with your support, ladies and gentlemen, you have to support us in these endeavors. When we stand up and do things like this, if you all just walk away and say, well, that was a good speech, that does nothing for us. We need you to talk about these things in your spaces. Talk about these issues where you are, where you work, in your communities. That is what empowers this group of individuals behind me to be successful. Thank you all very much for your time today. I don't know who's next. Well, okay, Carol is next. But I'm going to get excited up here and start preaching in a minute. But thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Look, this is serious time for black folks. I'm not going to hold this. Look, I'm going to bring to the mic 2 senators that are hard-working leaders. Senator Mike Simmons and Senator Collins to the microphone.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm State Senator Mike Simmons, and I represent the 7th District of Illinois, which is on the far north side of Chicago. Happy Black History Month, everybody. It feels really good to be in Illinois' capital as the first black lawmaker elected from my Senate district on the north side of Chicago. And I just wanted to lift up all the black people in the building right now for taking part in their democracy and shaping the direction of our state. One of the first bills that I introduced 3 years ago when I took the oath of office as a state senator, one of the first press conferences I organized called for a child tax credit in Illinois. And I am encouraged to see that the governor has included in his budget proposal a new child tax credit for the state of Illinois. But because this is personal for me, Because I introduced that child tax credit and have led a movement to create one in Illinois for 3 years, because I know what it was like to grow up in a household where I saw my mother, a single mother, raising 2 children, up late at the kitchen table, trying to decide what bill she would pay. We had to forego doctor's visits in order to pay rent and keep the lights on and keep food on the table. And no family in Illinois, no black family, no white family, no Latino family should ever have to make those kind of painful choices. And so in this budget negotiation, we have got to push to make sure that this child tax credit is robust and that it puts a sizable dent in child poverty in this state. Because we know that a few $100s at the end of the month can make the difference of whether the lights are on at night or not. We know from the census that in 2022, 1 out of 6 children in this state was living in poverty. But you know what? That number more than doubles for black children. No one talks about it, but I'm going to talk about it today. 1 out of 3 children in the state of Illinois, 1 out of 3 black children in the state of Illinois is living in poverty. 1 out of 3 black children in our state has to watch their mother or their father or their grandmother, aunt, or in the case of where I grew up, older brother, struggle and scrimp and make undignified choices to get by. And so we know that the child tax credit, when the expansion was done at the federal level, poverty reduced by 46%. So we can do this here in Illinois. A proposal that I've carried would reduce child poverty in this state by 8%. We don't have another day to go on this. We can't come back a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 5 years from now, where 1 out of 3 black children in this state continues to live in poverty. So we must name that disparity, and we must be aggressive in fighting for a robust child tax credit for the state of Illinois so that we can become the 15th state in the country to enact a child tax credit. That will be my North Star during the budget negotiations over the next several weeks. And so I thank you for giving me the opportunity to reflect on that today. And I also want to say thank you to my colleagues who've come up here and talked about violence prevention. And so many of us know what it's like to have a shooting right down the street from our house. I was by a high school in my district 2 weeks ago, and I missed a shooting by 60 seconds where a 16-year-old was killed and laid to rest. What do we say to his mother? What do we say to Devon's mother? What do we say to his father? What do we say to his principal? What do we say to his teachers about why that bullet has taken that child prematurely? And so we got to fight to make sure that we have dollars to bring down violence in our districts so that Illinois can thrive and our communities can be sustainable over time. Thank you so much, everybody.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am State Senator Lakeisha Collins of the 5th Senate District, representing the west side and the near north side of Chicago. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here. I know, right? Y'all love that. Such an honor to be here with my colleagues who all put in work every single day for their constituents across the state of Illinois. I'm very pleased with the budget that the governor has presented today. It is a proposal. I want to be clear, it's a proposal. And there are a lot of things in this proposal that I feel are progressing our state forward. But I would be remiss if I did not mention one thing about housing. See, the African American community has been experimented on since our ancestors crossed those shores. I'm going to say that again. The African American community has been experimented and researched on since the day our ancestors crossed those shores. For decades, our community has had housing has been used as a tool to discriminate against African Americans, to lock us out of something that is it's a basic necessity, and that's access to owning their own home, creating their own generational wealth. And it has been done before. Let's talk about Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Greenwood, Oscarville, that they drowned and put a lake on top of it. Plenty of African booming communities have been drowned intentionally to keep black people down. So I do not blame black folks for being upset today because they're watching wealth go right before their eyes while they have been crying and screaming and demanding to have access, whether it be to health care, whether it be to housing, jobs, all the access, all the social service you could think of, they have been asking for these things. And even though we are addressing that in this budget and the past budgets, to know that we have $50 million going to research something we already know. We can do better. So I know it's just a proposal, but we have a lot of more work to do when it comes to stability in our community. We need home ownership. We hear people talking about affordable housing, but it is not affordable. The average family is making $38,000 while living in a community where there's $500,000 houses down the street, which drives up the market. We know this. I experienced homelessness as a young person. That wears on your mental. Not knowing where you're able to sleep, where you're gonna get your next meal from, that is something that a young person in the African American community experiences every single day. And we cannot continue to use it as a talking tool, and African Americans don't see that. They want to believe that when we're down here in Springfield, that we are bringing back significant gains, and we have been, but we are in a moment right now where we know our constituents are not happy. And so we have to address this with putting actual funding to removing those barriers so that our constituents in the African American community across the state of Illinois, especially in the rural areas like Cairo, can get real housing, can have a place to really lay their head, can sit at a table, have a meal, and take away some of the stress that we know will cause death because of the high blood pressure, because of the stress in every day of figuring out where am I gonna lay my head at next. I'm telling you, it's not easy going to somebody else's house and they give you a set of rules or charge you extra money just to lay your head on the floor or on the couch, or sleeping inside a cramped up car trying to find out where you're going to wash up the next day. You have to have that experience to understand what I'm talking about. And so that has to reflect in this budget. And I look forward to having this continued conversation. But again, I want to thank my colleagues who have been here before me, who have laid the pathway to make these significant changes that we're seeing in this budget today. It would not have happened for leaders like Kimberly Lightford, for the LaShawn Fords of the world, and all of those who came before me, but we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to housing. Thank you, and I'm gonna pass it back to our chairwoman, Carol Emmons.
Thank you, Senator Collins, and our final presenter is our own Senator Hunter.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairwoman Ammons. I want to thank my colleagues for keeping their comments down to 2 minutes each. Myself and Leader Camille Lilly, we've been working on the Black Caucus Health and Human Services pillar for the past 3 years. And despite our state's progress, health disparities persist across Illinois. This leaves our Black and brown communities with higher rates of chronic diseases, poor health outcomes, and lower life expectancies. We must continue to prioritize the funding to address these disparities. This isn't just a matter of what's fair or right, it's a matter of public health and justice. Health equity at its core means that everyone has an equal opportunity to live a healthy lifestyle. The governor's proposal includes continued funding for initiatives set forth in the Black Caucus Health and Human Services pillar, including addressing the state's maternal mortality rate and supporting families through the Child Care Assistance Program. This is a step in the right direction as we demonstrate our commitment to prioritizing equitable access to health care services and addressing underlying issues. While we are encouraged by the governor's proposal, it's important to recognize the level of work that is still needed to reduce disparities and improve access to health care throughout the state. This requires our sustained commitment, allocation of resources, and focus as we negotiate the final budget that lifts up underserved communities. The governor's proposal includes, I'm stopping. Illinois has a history of working to do what's right. Building on this foundation, we have the opportunity to further and strengthen our efforts to rectify injustices within our state's healthcare system. We would like to thank you all very much for coming, and did you want to close? Thank you very much, y'all.
Thank you, Senator Hunter. This year, we will be negotiating from a position of strength. Our community and our members are the value add in the General Assembly, and nothing can be passed without our members. And so this year, we will release a document entitled Leveling the Playing Field, using the general fund budget to invest in building an equitable state and eliminating structural racism. It will be the first of its kind released from the Black Caucus that has dollar figures listed in it and the issues that all of our members have spoken to today. Our goal is to not just put it into the budget, but to get it out to our communities. That is the point of this budget address today, and we look forward to working with the governor, the Speaker's office, as well as all of our colleagues in the House and Senate to redress the most needed investments in the Black community across this state, because as we invest in the Black community, everyone knows that it is an investment in all other communities that benefit. Thank you all so much for your time this afternoon.